coming today. This is our first annual spring meeting for the Natural Fiber Textile Development Workgroup. So thank you everyone for attending. I think we'll get started and hand it over to the commissioner for some welcome and introductions.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna throw it back at you again. Can we just find out everyone who's online and then let everybody in the room kind of announce themselves, so everybody knows who we're talking to? That would be really good, yes.
Great, yeah. Just going in order of who's on my screen. Susan, would you like to introduce yourself? Oh, you're muted.
All right, I'm gonna try this again. Hi, I'm Susan Easton, New York Fashion Innovation Center. Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming. How about Christy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Wiedemann. I'm a PhD candidate at Rutgers University studying local fiber.
And Dr. Larry Smart?
Hello, I'm Larry Smart. I'm a professor of plant breeding at Cornell University.
And Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura Sansone. I'm the executive director of New York Fiber Shed, and I run a design and consulting company called New York Textile Lab.
And it looks like Rabbit.
Hi, I'm Rabbit Goody. I run a
You're cutting out.
There's on the phone.
The phone.
can't help that.
I'm sorry, Rabbit. We weren't able to hear you. Can you introduce yourself again?
I'll try.
Yep.
My name is Rabbit Goody, and I run Thistle Hill Weavers, a custom and commission weaving business.
Thanks. And I guess we'll start at the table. I'll start first. My name's Catherine Davis. I work for the Department of Agriculture Markets. Been here about 4 years. And I help coordinate the work group.
I'm Emily Cook. I'm the team lead for the business development unit here at Iron Markets.
Jeff Silberman with Hudson Valley Textile Project.
Lily Marsh Studios.
Hi, Rabbit.
Hi.
I have my own business designer. Hi, everybody. Hi, Hi, Laura. Hi, I'm Alpha Stark. I'm a senior director at Empire State Development.
Hi, everybody, Richard Ball.
Kelly Young, I'm a deputy commissioner here at the Department of Ag. Renee St. Jacques, New York Farm Bureau.
Hudson Valley Textile Project. Steve Hadcock, Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Jean Packer. I represent the Empire Sheep Producers Association on this work group. I'm also the executive director of the Hudson Valley Textile Project and founder of Baton Fiber.
Hi, I'm Tim Peflossi, Director of Agricultural Development here at Ag Market.
I'm Cece Katchik, I'm late. I'm a sheep farmer and also a member of the Hudson Valley Textile Project.
Fashionably late. I beat Kelly and I beat Tim.
Well played.
That's what they were thinking. Yeah, is that everybody? Yes.
Yeah, I think we hit everyone.
Yeah, great group. Thanks so much. And we've got a pretty good agenda in front of us. I think the last time we met was October last year, although quite a few of us needed even before that at the state fair, which was pretty cool. I got to see a little bit of a movie about 25 times. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but so thanks for being a part of this. And great to have Allison Stark here from Empire State Development. I think this work group lives here, but it's a really important part of collaborating with Empire State Development. Is what we do. So just a couple of brief things I want to mention. The Food and Fiber Processing Grant Program will award $10 million in funding this year. That closed in April, the application for that. I think there was twice that amount of money requested by people. And late this summer, maybe in time for the fair, we'll be talking about where that money went. I think everybody knows that from the certified program, we have a grant program there, marketing, help with funds. That's ongoing. That's going to be accepting applications, I think, through the fall, right? September. Farm Viability hosts that. I'm familiar with them, I think, MJ. But also on your radar screen, Beginner Farmer Grant Program, we do that as well here. If you're aware of any fiber producers that are looking to get their feet in the ground, less than 10 years, I think, in business. There's another opportunity for them. We have our second year of the Wool Center at the State Fair. MJ's group is going to be manning that, taking care of that. I think we had a pretty great year last year. Finally got a place to be. It was adequate, clean, well-lighted space. And remember the day before the fair opened, just climbing around ladders and cables and plumbing. And so this year we should be a little smoother. And I mentioned that film. You guys probably heard this, but it was more or less a trailer that we were showing in the Hort Building last year, which was pretty fun. I guess I'm not sure how long the full length of that film is, but I guess it's going to be shown at the Tribeca Film Festival this year, which is like, you've hit the big time. I don't know how many of you have been to the Tribeca. I have. It's a pretty cool place to see a film. And well, it's kind of a fun little. I can't hurt, right?
Are you going?
I can't hurt.
Are you going?
I get there. I plan to get there. Yeah. Are you going?
Yes, I'm gonna see the world premiere.
You gonna be for the world premiere?
Yes.
I heard the tickets are all sold out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wear your best wool. Assuming the red carpet is, based out of fiber. Anyway, so that's it for me. I think we have a pretty good agenda here and we can answer any questions you have about any of those opportunities. So look to Emily or Catherine for those things. I'll turn it over to Alice. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. I'll keep it brief because I know we have a really good agenda for today. Thanks everybody for being here, and I just wanted to note that part of this group is growing the fiber industry, right? And that's my job. So everything that you guys say today, I take it back and it helps me do my job better. So I truly appreciate everything that's said in this group, and I look forward to meeting with you guys twice a year, 3 times a year? Twice. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite working groups, if I can say I have favorites. And so I'll leave it at that. I'm really looking forward to this agenda and some of the exciting updates that we have to come.
Great. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Commissioner. So next up, we have a few updates from some of our members. Susan was going to give us an update on NYFIC and some of their work. Susan, would you like to?
Sure. Okay. We've had a very busy year and we are projecting a very busy upcoming year. So yes, the film, what started off as a 5 minutes video that was played at the State Fair along with some different farm to fashion looks has now turned into a full-fledged short documentary of 23 minutes and will be shown the world premiere at Tribeca Festival on June 13th in the evening and 14th. And tickets are sold out, but there are day of that will be available. And that was an amazing collaboration between many people that are actually in the room and others that are not. So very happy with the publicity this will get the local fiber movement. I also just want to mention that we did complete with NYFIC in combination with Pro Livestock and HVTP a farmer fiber survey. We had 122 respondents, and we are working on putting out a report for that. We are in late summer slated to open the NYFIC lab at that will be located at RPI, and that will be for testing and sampling, and there'll be more details on that at a later date. We are working on rolling out a raw materials and manufacturing a directory for New York State, and that the application forms will be hopefully coming out later in the summer or beginning fall. And then based on those, we'll be developing the directory, and that will include infrastructure on the raw material side. It will include farms as well as any effects, and for fiber, for natural dyes, for any plant materials, and on the manufacturing side, all of the different capabilities of processing and manufacturing, as well as some information about if they've had experience working with New York materials. We have our grants program that the application for the next round is due June 1st. And so if anyone in this room wants to do a last minute push, the information is at nyfic.org/grants. And I just wanted to quickly go over the round 3 awardees that were announced in April. We have 8 of them. One of them is Diapatek, and they're developing farm to wearable tech supply chain using New York fibers for textile components, and that's basically for health monitoring devices. And then the second grantee is Stephanie Downs from Uncaged Innovations, and they are partnering with a New York leather finisher to develop scalable, low-impact process that expands the color range that they've developed, which is called Elevate. We have Jonathan Farber from Wellaway, and he will be producing handcrafted wool comforters, and that's all vertically integrated on his farm, so it's farm to home textile model. And we have Juan Guzman from CaproX, and that's scaling a circular bioplastic derived from fermented dairy waste. And that's to use as a flexible material in textile and fiber applications. That's an exciting one, the idea of, with next gen materials, mapping it to agricultural waste. So I'm excited about that. We have Casey Lardner from GenSpace and Helen Liu from Columbia University, and they're launching biofabrication workshops that explore the intersection of biology, fashion, and sustainable materials. We have Tracy Reed from Knit Resorts, and they are transforming their leftover dead stock materials into upcycled yarns. And we have Anne Scully-Jers from Bide Farm, and they're building a portable fiber tumbler to improve and accelerate wool processing for regional farms and artisans. And we have Stephanie Seal Brown, who is creating woven textiles from New York long wool breeds for use in interior design. So that was the round 3. I believe that you've heard about rounds 1 and 2, but it's really exciting to see their progress and how everyone is kind of coming in at different stages of their projects. And I think that we've, a lot of activities for upcoming, but I don't want to take everyone's time since we've got a jam-packed schedule. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them, and I'm happy to follow up afterwards with anyone. So thank you.
Thanks, Susan. I think next we're going to go hear from MJ and Gail about some Hudson Valley textile project activities.
Do you want to do Empire Sheep Association first, or? Sorry.
Whatever you want.
Thanks for giving me all these. Yeah, I have used yours, Mary Jean.
Okay. the Sheep Association works in not just wool, but in dairy and meat also. And in all that we do, one of our big priorities is in youth engagement. So this is one of many of the things that our organization works on. But as it relates to this group, we've been collaborating with whoever, Susan and Ag and Markets, on helping to fund the Fashion Week event that's going to relate to the same video that we're talking about in Tribeca. The Sheep Association is helping to make up the missing cash to make that event work, and we're proud of doing that. And also in another collaboration that Susan and I are just really starting to identify, it's to how to go a little further with the farmer survey that she mentioned, to really get our handle on who's out there in the wool space, even if frankly, they don't know they're in the wool space. A lot of sheep farmers don't realize that the wool on their sheep is actually a product as opposed to a piece of waste they need to figure out how to discard. So the intent of our work there is to identify their needs or their interest, and then their needs and readiness to take action, and then also to help them find resources for action. In some cases, there's NRCS funds for various pasture and other feeding systems, support from land trusts who care about regenerative agriculture and soil health and so on. So the only other thing the commissioner took my lead on that one is we're back to the state fair this year. We're back and already had a great meeting with the new education program leader last week, and we're going on a walkthrough next week. We want to add a few more exhibits. There was only 6 or 8 permanent exhibits fabricated and installed last year as we were so short on time. But more exhibits coming this year, including information out in the barn, because we had been under the impression that the barn might be ready last year and it could have been perhaps a tent instead. So now we'll be doing a little more like those fun facts for kids where you go around and you open the little thing and there's a clue and you, oh, I knew that. And then you go on to the next one. So that's all in the works at the Sheep Association as it relates to natural fibers.
Sounds good, yeah. Thank you, Emily. Gail.
Okay, just kind of, I'm still kind of coming down from our summit on April 22nd, which was just so amazing. We had Antoinette Klasky from the Eileen Fisher Foundation as our keynote speaker, and she spoke to solving that we need to solve the textile waste problem by from the design up. So from the farm designers up, not from recycling down. And to that, we introduced our Hudson Valley Textile Project sweater, which you'll be seeing more of. But in that room, every piece of the supply chain stood up that produced that sweater, from the farmer's wool down to the people that knit it. So that was really pretty amazing that they all stood up. Catherine was there talking, representing Ag Markets for growing and certifying. And with that, we have rolled out the New York Fiber Trail. I think 119 stops on the New York Fiber Trail this year, which includes shops and farms. And we are encouraging everyone from farms to shops to explore and become grown and certified. I'm going to toss it over to our executive director because she knows more can tell you about what's going on at Clean Fleece and any effects.
Okay. And the fiber trail is turning out to be a really good way of raising raising consumer awareness of what's happening. And it's really, for the first time, we're engaging with this community of knitters in a meaningful way outside of a festival. That's always been the way, one weekend a year, they knit with local fiber, and the other however many weeks of the year, they're back to their superwash, Australian wool. And, this really appears to be working just from what we're seeing in social media already. It just started the 1st of May. And I did forget to mention the Sheep Association is a proud supporter of the fiber trail. We can pass that around. So back to the Hudson Valley Textile Project. Another grant, which we really appreciate being able to apply for, was the Workforce Development Grant in that list of things the department is doing to help our industry, making that funding available. And so our association has applied to that, having been encouraged by last year's speakers from DOL, who we've done several follow-up calls with, to establish a path to being a professional textile industry person. And starting with designing an internship program that really gives somebody the foundation of what it would take to come into our industry as a full-time employee. So we're fingers crossed. And is that also on that same decision timeline of the Food and Fiber Growth Fund for August, do you think?
I'm not sure the timeline. I think it's about there. I gotta tell you that 100 times more applications than we anticipated. So.
Well, we'll make it easy for you. There's a great one about workforce for the textile industry.
Good to know.
Pull that one.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I just ask,
Yeah.
are you pursuing the official apprenticeship route or a different route?
Both. In the grant, we're taking a different route, which is a weeks-long commitment, not a year-long commitment, but using the funds with matching funds by the host site to do way more than a job shadow. That's what we didn't want, is job shadow. We really wanted somebody to know what they're getting into. And we've got quite an interesting list of fiber farms that are interested in, and that's something that, even if we don't get the grant, was really worthwhile finding those people who we didn't realize there was that level of interest in that particular community. So just putting together the application, and then all the way through others in the room like myself at Battenkill and Mimi, who also need help and would look that way. And then in parallel, we are working with DOL. I'm pointing at Lily because she chairs the Hudson Valley Textile Projects Committee for this work. But we're working with DOL, following the model we learned from Cornell's Butcher program, to make a true program of that nature that might include classes at Hudson Valley Community or ACC Adirondack, as well as the hands-on in shops, in factories. So yes, we got all that on our radar screen. And then Gail asked me to talk about the thing called the Northeast Fiber Exchange, which is the concept of our business, for lack of a better term, the project of the Hudson Valley Textile Project with support from the New York Fashion Innovation Center, has acquired the equipment and personnel and building renovations needed now to have a steady stream of wool coming in, classing and sorting, and then wool going out to meet the needs of a customer who says, I want this or I want that. And so a bottleneck has been addressed, but the moment it was addressed, we got a new bottleneck, because nobody wants scoured wool. I mean, nobody wants grease wool, they want scoured wool. And our scouring facility, which the Hudson Valley Textile Project developed with support from its members and in collaboration with the New York Fashion Innovation Center, that facility is so woefully undersized. So we're eagerly pursuing getting the right size scouring line into that building. And I can just say, from my role as a member of the American Wool Council, this is like a topic across the country. You hear undersized regional scouring in the Pacific Northwest, in Northern California, in the Appalachian Southeast. Everyone's talking about need for regional scouring, so we aren't alone. And that's the work that's continuing. We have great farmer response. So we're doing trainings, pickup points all across the state now, Long Island, Lower Hudson Valley, Upper Finger Lakes, Western New York, Southern Tier. So a lot of interest in getting wool back into the market, which for years has not had a buyer. At the HBTP, our members also support the NYFIC grant recipients that you heard about, both the ones that have already received the recipient and also the applicants. So right now, we're also helping people who are thinking of applying think through the ways in which they could work with local materials or local processing, supply chain capability and capacity. And finally, HBTP has kind of taken the lead on legislative affairs, for lack of a better term, to try to help get some resources for this group to have going forward to help implement the priority recommendations of our work plan. And so we've done the best we can without, well, none of us are professional lobbyists by any means, but talking to the people that we know, elected officials, and explaining what's happening here and our need for funding that would come to the department to then help implement some of these projects. So as we know, there's still no budget, and we're hoping that maybe there'll be a line that would help with these recommendations. That's the end of my report.
Great. That's all.
That's all. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's great.
I just
Yeah.
want to jump in for 1 second
Yeah.
because it would be great to be able to talk about that at the state fair. So seeing a farmer setting up, seeing someone who all along the way to a finished product for people to see that somehow in a display, whether it's photographs or whatever, some of the things that are actually happening around the state. You got
That was farm to fashion a bit, you're
Yeah,
like, yeah,
exactly.
all of
Yeah,
the hands involved in that is quite literally an important point of the work that we.
that's exactly right. So it's cool for us to hear this
Yeah.
times potentially 1 million people or whatever.
What we could do is
Another
make a
thing-
static exhibit. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Another thing, just to add on to what MJ was saying. So we didn't lobby, but we did do an educational setup at the state capitol where we brought the farm to fashion looks that really showcase, from the beginning all the way to the end. And we had that original video playing. I think that the next stage is to act like rather than it being a static of like, here's the path and here's what happened. I would love to re-explore the idea of educational contests, at the at the college level, and to really try and get some of our materials into the hands of students to help them as they prepare to be the next generation of designers, so that our material gets requested. And then just to add on to that, there were a couple other quick things that I just wanted to mention. We do have a yarn work group and a non-wovens work group, and we've just decided to start a carpet work group, and all of those are to try and get the raw materials and the to a processed point so that we can engage commercially in the design industry, because basically designers and brands, they go to trade shows for the most part and they purchase materials that are already made, or they order materials and then they use those. And so right now, the idea of having to find the farm or go to even NEFX and get their fleece and then get it scoured the way MJ was talking about at Clean Fleece, and then go to say Bat and Kill and get it spun, and then visit like Rabbit or Lily and get it woven or go have it knit. That process and that taking maybe a year because there's a lot of like bottlenecks and wait times along the way makes us not competitive to be in the commercial space. So I think priorities about helping students understand how to use materials and making sure we have those materials to give to them and to the industry will help position us in the upcoming years in a really strong way. So just wanted to pipe in with that.
I just want to revisit something and then let's not forget 4-H as well. Because used to have a Make It With Wool program with, huh?
Tyler.
That's right.
Yep.
And beginning to start before college with our secondary school students.
And the Make It With Wool contest does still take place in New York, and the Empire Sheep Producers Association are the ones that fund that contest and keep their national registration. So when we have a winner here in New York, we, the Sheep Association, pay for them to go to the national competition. And one of our exhibits at the state fair in the new wool center is of the winning garment with a little sign that explains where it came from and how. Sadly, we have yet to see one where the wool came from New York, because the Make It With Wool program is more about learning to work with the material than work with local material. This Hudson Valley Textile Project did work with the Cooperative Extension Group in Rensselaer and Washington, Warren County this winter, doing a sewing project that was oversubscribed. More kids wanted to do it than there were sewing machines, and they made all wool cowls, neck gaiters, out of the same responsible wool standard certified wool that the Winter Olympics uniforms were made out of, that were mill ends from a knitting mill partner of ours in Massachusetts who donated the double knit wool. It was seconds, but the kids had a riot and they embroidered by hand little Olympic symbols on it, and so they felt just like, and it also helped realize that, you know, wool's real and the Winter Olympic people are wearing it.
Jump in again.
Go ahead.
We were just talking about Make It With Wool, and when you talk about later in the agenda, we bring up educational opportunities. I would love to figure out how do we find those groups ahead of time, because that's one of the reasons I brought yardage, because they don't know that we are making yardage. And so if we can do presentations to some of those Make It With Wool teams or clubs or, you know, the 4-H sewing clubs, that we can say there is yardage available that's New York process sourced manufactured.
And if we got the 300,000, we could give some mini grants to those 4-H clubs to be able to buy those local materials instead of asking for yet another donation from the supply chain.
Yeah.
Before I pipe in, Laura, you have your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Thanks. You know, I just wanted to mention that we have been piloting a student award contest with sheepskin at Parsons. And that was part of the NYFIC award. So we piloted it this past year, and it was very successful. And we wrote for a SARE grant to continue that, to expand on that program. So I just wanted to mention that sheepskin is something that, you know, shouldn't be overlooked when we're looking at, you know, fiber and using, you know, various value-added products from the farms.
And I was just going to say, NYFIC would be very happy to talk about 4-H and BOCES. And the way I was just talking about with the fashion students at the college level, I'd like to also think about the whole supply chain, because we are, you know, we need shearers, skilled shearers. We need, like, all along the supply chain, there are jobs that are so crucial to the ecosystem. And so would love to think about how we bolster that in all of those directions. So I don't think it should just be about trying to find the designers in every area, but maybe we actually like start to think about how we make the jobs that are in our supply chain more desirable and more coveted. And maybe there's competitions or programming around that.
Amy had a comment.
I was going to kind of extend on that just from a perspective of, I think we've talked about this in the initial stages of what farm to fashion became, but like the idea of an educational programming that surrounds around the specific design schools that are going into industry, I think is really important. There's really high level competitions for students in the design field, LVMH. There's, a lot of really highly regarded competitions. And if we could position New York Fiber as something like that, that would be very interesting for these designers to participate. It would add another level of interest and excitement that then trickles into the industry, then becomes aware. And, I think that is my train of thought there for that. And so I think it's bringing in things into the classrooms and just the understanding of how this all works and it trickling into the industry. And I mean, there's a lot of layers that go into industry, but it's a good start for the students.
Thanks, everyone. This is a really good discussion, but I'm gonna pause it maybe, and then we'll come back to this. I think next we're gonna hear from Tim really briefly about some Taste New York sales data. I have a share on that.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. So this is my first work group meeting. It's a pleasure to meet many of you. Some of you I know from our display at the State Fair, which was a lot of fun. Susan, I'm looking at you also. Very exciting energy around that. So I did get introduced to you all that way. Yeah, just some quick numbers to share. I was going to try to impress you by wearing my wool sweater, but thought that might be overdoing.
We're going
it
to
for
linen
summer
now.
Yeah. But instead, hopefully some impressive numbers. I'm here on behalf of Jess Woodward, who I think has presented to the group before, right? I was in a prior role, helped develop the welcome centers and can say, rely on maybe embarrassingly, but that we did not have fiber products initially. It's focused on food and other. So I think one of the outcomes of this group and discussions has been really exciting to see that we have fiber products in all of the Taste New York and Welcome Center stores, with a small asterisk for Mohawk Valley because that's pending only. But some really good progress there, and going to report on a couple of them where we have the best highlights to show. So Capital Region Welcome Center, and you can see this on the slide. This is representing, 8 months of data, total fiber sales of over $4,000. So they have both large and small gloves and hats, around $800. And then a wide variety of ornaments, blankets, deerskin gloves, dryer balls, bison gloves, scarves, table runners out of over $3,000. So good response there. And then also at Todd Hill, they sold 260 units for about $7,000 worth of fiber products. And they mentioned that the felted wool pot holders drove the sales in that category because it was at a price point of less than 25. So a lot of movement there. But interestingly, they also had several blankets that sold in a matter of hours, which were higher price items. So I think what we're seeing here is both of these locations, they get a lot of traffic coming up from the metro area, and there's a lot of interest. And really, when we are looking at what products to have in the different stores, it's important to look at, what the sales are in the past, what's the driving point, and who's there. So the Adirondack Welcome Center also, they introduced, they don't have a lot of sales numbers yet, but they have recently introduced or seen some success with the dryer balls and socks. So even though that's a vending machine only location, they have seen movement there also. So Catherine said, keep it brief. So that's my brief report. Yeah.
Tim, what was the price point on the blankets? Do you have that handy?
They, I believe, were around $300. I can check for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll circle back with you on it.
Okay.
All right. And now we have Dr. Larry Smart joining us today from Cornell. He's going to give us a little bit of information about his hemp program and his hemp work that he does there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Catherine. I have a slideshow. I'm going to try to share my slides here. Can you see that okay?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, great. So this is a talk that I gave at a meeting of the National Industrial Hemp Council last year at North Carolina State, co-hosted by their College of Textiles. And it's really trying to get across the concept that in our breeding program, we work towards an idiotype. An idiotype is our image of an ideal variety, an ideal cultivar. It helps us to set goals in our breeding program and look for variation in those traits that are going to be most important. And at this point in the hemp industry, there, with no established supply chains, we think it's very important to look at the qualities that both the grower wants and the processor wants. And obviously I'm leaving out what the consumer wants. That will come in time, but I think we need to first establish, the basic characteristics of the varieties that will make the grower profitable and will make the product that we can turn into consumer products through the processor. So just want to acknowledge this is largely the work of my PhD student, Luis Monserrate, and I have a number of collaborators around the country. We're grateful for regular funding through New York State Ag and Markets, and this project was also co-funded by the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research. So what does the grower need? The grower needs to be able to sell their product at a reasonable cost, to be profitable. And in the case of hemp, as a low density product, it has to be pretty close by. So we're talking about local fiber sheds. We've heard that term before. We need local processing. Right now in the hemp supply chain, the big processors in the US are in Montana and Texas. So for a New York grower, any profit that they would have growing hemp will be eaten up by transport to those huge processing facilities. So we can grow hemp in New York very well. What we need now are processors. But it's not just a matter of producing hemp material and shipping it on a truck. The farmer also needs that crop to fit into their rotation, to work on their farm. It may not be strictly a matter of profitability by a dollar sense, but also improved production overall on their farm. And this is sort of an anecdotal image. It's a drone image of a field that was planted with sorghum Sudan grass the year after our hemp small plot trials. And what you can see is the green rectangles in this image exactly mirror where hemp was planted the year before. So I don't know why the sorghum Sudan grass is growing so well and is so vigorous where the hemp was before, but it's very remarkable that this crop clearly did better the year after hemp than the bare areas around the plots that are pale and yellow. Those are the types of things we need to figure out on the farmer's behalf, is what is the best crop rotation? What is the best time to plant hemp and harvest it so that they can put in their next crop and overall maintain profitability and sustainability on their farm? But hemp is an interesting crop because it's highly regulated, and the grower also needs compliant cultivars. And many of the fiber varieties that are being grown right now are being imported from China. We did that back in 2019. And what we quickly learned is that all of the fiber varieties coming from China produce THC. As we say in the industry, they go hot. And it's because they have not been bred to remove the genes for THC production. So they represent a pretty significant risk for the grower. Fortunately, through work in my lab and others, we've been able to identify the genes that produce THC. In fact, the gene for THC production sits in the exact same spot in the genome on the chromosome as the gene for CBD production in hemp. So we end up with a simple either or situation. In hemp, we want 2 copies of the gene for CBD production. In high THC cannabis, those plants have 2 copies of the gene for THC production. You can make hybrids between hemp and cannabis and get 1 gene for each. We've developed molecular markers to be able to pick out whether it's a gene for THC or a gene for CBD, and then through what we call marker-assisted selection at the seedling stage, we take a little leaf punch from these seedlings, thousands at a time, and eliminate the seedlings that have the genes for THC production. And through that process, we've been able to generate cultivars that only produce CBD, very low levels of THC, and represent a low risk in terms of compliance, regulatory compliance for the grower. Well, do they yield sufficient yields of fiber? And again, for the grower, getting paid by the bale on the truck, that's probably what they're most concerned about, is tons per acre. And I don't know if you can see the labels, but the 3 varieties on the left are from our breeding program at Cornell that have been consistently outproducing the other varieties that are available from Canada and Europe and some from China. So in terms of the grower's perspective, one more slide I have here is we have been collaborating with folks across the country, Texas A&M, North Carolina State, University of Kentucky, and our new fiber variety, maybe you just saw an article came out in the Cornell Chronicle describing this variety, is producing quite good yields across all of those different locations, Lubbock, Texas, North Carolina, and Lexington, Kentucky. So we think we have a good variety for growers in terms of yield and regulatory compliance. So what does the processor need? Well, the processor needs a reliable supply near their factory, consistent quality. And when we think about hemp and the hemp stalks, we're processing to make 2 different products. We use the inner woody hurd for construction materials or for high quality animal bedding. I think what this audience is interested in is the stacks of fiber on the left. But whenever we process hemp stalks, we're going to get both products. And here's another trick, is trying to develop markets for both of those products simultaneously. And to process the hemp stems, to separate those 2 streams, the hurd from the bast fiber, we need decortication. In the lab, we use, let me see if I can get this video going. We have a research scale decorticator where we can hand feed a few stems at a time. It works quite well to separate bast from hurd. And this gives us the opportunity to evaluate our different varieties, different harvest times, different retting times, all the different conditions that may play a role in fiber processing to give us bast to fiber ratio bass to herd ratio, and also to get clean fiber that we can then go on to look at fiber quality and fiber properties. So now, from the processor side, we can evaluate those cultivars. And again, these are ranked from left to right on the highest yield of bast fiber, which is the dark green bar. And you can clearly see that there are differences in the proportion of fiber to herd among these different cultivars. I will say our cultivar, Ursa Alta, is all the way on the right with the lowest bast content. So Future 83, which is one of the most popular French fiber cultivars, when we plant it in May, produces 38% bast and 57% herd, while our cultivar planted in May, we call it a herd monster. If you want to make animal bedding or construction material, Alta is probably the one to go with, just based on bast to herd ratio. But wait a minute. Let's now calculate the bast yield per acre. We multiply that percentage times the total yield of straw per acre. We see that Future 83 is still the winner, 1.7 tons of bast fiber per acre. Ursa Alta is only 1.1 tons. But if you're serving both markets, it is producing incredible amounts of herd. So in this case, about 6 tons per acre of herd, while Future 83 is only making 3 tons of herd per acre. So that's what we need to try to balance out as we're developing these cultivars. Is the market there for fiber yet? Is the market there for herd? What is the relative price and profitability for the farmer? And can a farmer actually grow a cultivar that serves both market opportunities? Moving up in scale, we have I would call a small industrial scale decorticator made in Colorado. It is a FiberTrack 660 decorticator. We have to run that outdoors for now because of the dust issues. We did not have a building at Cornell that could properly house this machine and control the dust. And what we have found is that that machine gets us to a certain point of fiber processing through decortication. That the fiber output from that machine is in the image on the left. And in analyzing that, it still has anywhere from 30% to 50% herd contamination in that fiber. So we have sent samples of that now to 2 testing labs. These are photos of processing and analysis done at an Andritz La Roche lab in France, where they have additional equipment for cleaning and refining. And you can see that our dirty fiber with the proper refining equipment can get us to textile grade fiber on the right. And we also sent it to a lab, the FRD CODEM lab. They did a number of tests for us. This is just one of the analysis of fiber length. And again, they took our dirty fiber, cleaned it and refined it, and got it to a pretty good state of cleanliness. But one thing they learned is that our fibers are around 26 centimeters long. So through our decortication and processing, we are maintaining good fiber length overall. So 2 years ago in the state budget, we were granted $5 million in the Bioeconomy Hub project. 3 million of that will go to building about a 3,000 square foot building to house this processing equipment, and additional funding, $1 million going to equipment for RPI. And we do have a strong collaboration with the New York Fashion Innovation Center. We're very much looking forward to the lab opening up so that I don't have to send samples to France anymore. I can send them to Clyde and we'll get the testing done there. So that's going to be fantastic. So we are very close to finishing the design phase of this bioeconomy hub building, of figuring out what that additional cleaning machine is that we need to be able to get to textile quality fiber, and getting it moved inside of a building so that we can be working year round and not just in the 3 or 4 months of the summer outdoors. I hope that I've showed you that we're trying to address all different aspects of the supply chain, breeding high quality and compliant cultivars, producing them at a pre-commercial demonstration stage on our farms at Cornell Agritech, so that eventually one day this fiber may get processed by Panda Biotech in Texas, and maybe someday get spun into yarn at a place like Barkdale Mills in South Carolina, or hopefully in processing and spinning mills in New York. So I will stop there. Would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Laird. Any questions? That was great.
Larry, what's the smallest tonnage that your 660 can handle? Not the largest tonnage, but the smallest tonnage that you can run through that machine.
Yeah, so that machine starts with a large round bale.
Yeah.
We're baling in 300-pound bales. So our hope right now is to be able to get about 1 bale process per hour. So it's only running at about 300 to 400 pounds per hour. It was sold to us as a 1 ton per hour machine.
Oh, okay.
The research scale decorticator, again, we're hand feeding individual stems through there. So that's several pounds per hour.
Right. Thanks. That was helpful.
Laura?
Larry, thanks for your presentation. I wanted to find out about how you're connecting with the growers, the farmers. You mentioned that the growing of the hemp should fit into their crop rotation. So have you been doing studies with the growers?
Yeah, so back in 2017, we were granted funds to plant acreage. I think our goal at that time was 2,000 acres. The commissioner can correct me if he's still in the room.
You just had to leave, Dr. Stewart.
Yeah. So we actually got that grant money in April and quickly hustled to get 50,000 pounds of seed in from Canada, and we're able to sign up 24 farms and get it planted by July. So the farmers were getting paid by the acre to plant that hemp, but one thing it taught us was that if there's a market, if they're going to get paid for that crop, they were happy to plant it. And yeah, at this point, because there are no offtake markets for hemp, we have a very small number of hemp farmers for grain and fiber. What we really need is a processing facility nearby to justify a farmer to plant hemp.
Okay, I run a regenerative soil program here in New York State called Climate Beneficial. And you know, we work with our growers to stack practices, and cover cropping is like one of the practices that they do frequently. So, and hemp can be used as a cover crop, you know, so I'm just curious, like, if that could be partnered with like the research somehow, right? Just like kind of switching up the hemp rather than a certain other kind of cover crop. I find it interesting, given that slide that you showed at the beginning, where you showed the graph, because I think, I mean, hemp, I think, it's known to sequester carbon, effectively. So I think it would be just an interesting thing to trial, along with this program that we have going.
Yeah. So one of my colleagues in plant breeding in Ithaca, Ginny Moore, is our cover crop breeder. So this year she is starting a long-term project to look at crop rotation, incorporating hemp in with soybean, corn, and wheat. That's expensive and long research to do because you want to, show the changes in soil health over time across all those different crop combinations. For us, one thing we're very eager to look at is whether we can plant hemp after wheat. So we're typically harvesting wheat at the end of June, early July. And we think that we have a grain cultivar that we can plant even in, let's say, July 10th and still get a viable yield of hemp grain. It can certainly be planted as a cover crop. We can certainly plant it there and it will flourish and make a nice green cover of biomass. But our hope is that we can also harvest some grain by the end of that period as well.
Okay, maybe I'll follow up to discuss it further with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you need any special equipment from the farmers to harvest the hemp?
So that's an interesting question. For grain hemp, we're using a combine. There is a particular header design and combine design that works best. But really, the folks in Canada are the experts at harvesting grain, and they've shown that many of the modern grain combines work very well in hemp. For fiber, it's really a matter of just using a sickle bar. The issue is that the hemp gets pretty tall. We typically have 10 to 12 foot high hemp. So folks have designed a harvester that actually has 4 sickle bars. Ours are spaced 30 inches apart, just because it's easier to handle those 30-inch sections of stem when you're raking and baling instead of a 10-foot long piece of stem. But it's really a pretty simple machine, and everything else is standard agriculture equipment, hay rake and large round baler.
Thank you.
I have a quick question for you around the fiber processing. I think you mentioned Montana and Texas as processing, but I don't see in the commercial market US hemp or flax in textiles. Do you know the reason for that?
I believe the reason is because no one is spinning it into yarn in the US. So those companies, my understanding right now, are producing clean fiber and shipping it overseas. So I&D Hemp in Montana just announced a joint venture with a company in Vietnam to ship fiber to Vietnam. And I know, I'm pretty sure that Panda has also been shipping containers of fiber to China. So we just need to get to a point where we can convince the spinning mills that we have a sufficient quality and volume of raw material for them to spin either hemp and cotton blends, or I know that NC State is working very hard on spinning 100% hemp yarn.
And all bast fibers, can they go through the same spinning and processing mills, or are those separate? Like, would flax and hemp be separate processing?
Yeah, so 100% hemp would need to go through a wet spinning mill. So that I don't know how many, I'm going to defer to MJ, how many wet spinning mills we have around. I'm sorry?
And also we're talking about two stable lengths of hemp. The work they're doing in North Carolina is around cottonized hemp. So that means taking the hemp that Larry's making that's actually kind of pretty good, long, stable length that could be blended, and we have successfully blended with New York sourced wool to make upholstery fabric. That's one kind, and then the work is that you're talking about now is where they chop up the hemp so it looks like cotton fiber, and then can use it in machine knits, such as a t-shirt, let's say, could be made with hemp, and that's often a popular item for people who are seeking to add hemp to their fashion lineup. So it's several different kinds of mills, but we don't do that long line wet spun fast fibers here in the Northeast.
You mentioned RPI Lab would be doing sampling for you. Are you expecting them to take the hemp and making yarn samples with it?
I believe they are setting up spinning mills with that intent. Yes.
Larry, are you doing work with flax as well?
We are growing flax. Yeah, I thought we grew about 4 to 5 acres of fiber flax, 3 different varieties from France last year. We planted another 4 acres of fiber flax a week ago, Tuesday, May 12th. And the flax grew quite well for us. We didn't see that huge a difference between the different cultivars. And I will say last year was a really tough year for flax because it got so hot in June. Flax really does not like temperatures above 85 or 90 degrees, and it got pretty hot. The issue is that to grow it for fiber, we need a puller, a turner, and a flax baler. And we were working with the PA Flax Project to try to get their equipment up here to harvest our flax, and it just didn't work out. In fact, I just exchanged some emails with Heidi Barr, the PA Flax Project today, and they brought their puller, turner, and baler down to North Carolina State, where they grow flax over the winter time, and they just harvested my colleague David Suchoff's flax down there. And Heidi was pretty optimistic that we would be able to harvest our flax this summer. The next question is then, can we get a scutching line for flax? Which would, we're not going to run flax through our big hemp decorticator. We would need a scutching line. And yeah, that would be on our wish list. Would certainly to be able to scutch some flax as well.
Thank you.
We have started a flax breeding program. Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much. That's great.
Yeah, and just a final point, again, we are making pilot scales of material, fiber, hurd, whole stem material, and we are very eager to share those materials with New York companies, startup companies, entrepreneurs. A lot of folks are trying to get some funding through the Grow New York competition, and we are more than happy to help them try to develop their products.
Great.
That's really good to hear. I hadn't realized we've got to that point, but I can give you a bales quantity order. I'll send an email. That's a moment we've been waiting for, because the freight on bringing the decorticated hemp from Alabama is just a killer. Because one little bale, the cost of the freight on the bale is as much as the cost of the material. It's just not practical to be building our spinning business around imported hemp materials. So delighted to hear that. I'll be right in touch.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks for the time.
Thank you. Right. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, we now are going to talk about a trade show opportunity that we have. I'm going to share some information. So Emily and I spoke with a representative from New York Now a couple weeks ago. We reached out based on some feedback from this group. I think in our last spring meeting, we expressed some interest about possibly attending a trade show. So we've been looking into that, and the New York Now opportunity kind of presented itself. So if that is still something this group is interested in, we could continue to pursue that opportunity with a couple of different options. So a potential option number one would be to have, we could kind of connect you with the woman we spoke with at New York Now, and then you all could, or, whatever businesses are interested, could register on your own and have your individual booths that we could potentially partially subsidize with Taste New York funds. That's one option. So you'd each have your own booths, whether it's a 10 by 10 or 5 by 10. Those are the options. That's option number one. So option number two would be to, and this is something kind of similar that we've done with food trade shows that we've attended for Chase New York, which is to have a New York pavilion. So we'd have probably a 20 by 20 area, and that would be offered to probably up to 4 businesses who are interested, and it'd be under one kind of Taste New York umbrella. And your attendance that would be partially subsidized again. So those are basically the two options we'd have for New York Now. As far as timing, we would be looking at the February 2027 show. There would be an opportunity for maybe 1 or 2 folks to attend and walk the floor at the August show to see if it's a good fit and see if it's something we want to commit to. The businesses who would participate would have to pay for your own travel. That wouldn't be covered as part of the attendance. And the businesses would be required to either participate in the New York State Grown and Certified program or the Taste New York program. And yeah, so if that's something you're still interested in, yes, no.
I've been to the New York Now. Gail and I went years ago when we were thinking of that as an approach for helping the members of the Hudson Valley Textile Project reach into new markets. And I know through my business, several people who sell there now, and it's like these giant shows. It's a huge show, and if we were to decide to do it, I would certainly vote for the New York Pavilion. Because to get seen in a show like that, one little booth for one little business people just go right by. It's so much going on that you really need the pavilion approach. In my husband's business, we're maple syrup farmers, and we just did the Ag and Markets Restaurant Show a year ago this time in Chicago. And we made some pretty good contacts by being in the pavilion. If we'd been alone at that show, nothing would have happened. All the signage is taken care of for us by the state. It's a comprehensive look and feel, some opportunities to do common messaging around the materials or why you should use local materials that come from New York, a backdrop of artisans, all these kinds of things make that. So if we were going to vote on option 1 or option 2, I am urging you to vote on option 2 for sure. I do think anyone who's going to do the show or even thinking of it, not just 2 people, people would have to pay their own way to New York City, but it's not bad to go and really dig in to what the vibe of that show is like. Because the buyer at that show includes lots of people right around here, gift shop people, decorating their house at Lake George, so that the gift shop at Lake George goes to New York Now to find the products to offer in their gift shop for second homeowners who want to come and have throw pillows made out of plaid woven hemp blend fabric stuffed with wool, New York wool, scoured at Plain Flakes. I mean, that's the kind of person who comes to the show, and that's the kind of thing, if you can cut through the clutter, they're looking for. but we gotta be clear on who's our market and how do we need to present ourselves to reach them.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing this. They did provide me with a list of buyers who've attended previously.
Is it still at the Javits?
Yes.
I do have experience with New York
Yeah.
now. My question is, how competitive New York brands could be. Can't see, because it's international, and a lot of the buyers that are coming are, it's a wholesale model, so they are going to mark up whatever you sell 2.2 to 2.5, sometimes 3.0. And so it's, so when you have your wholesale sheets, you'll just have to keep that in mind, that the end price is set, by the retailers. And 10,000 villages I see, like those are, it's going, there's a global, it's stocked by global providers. And so the price points are, are a big part
Yeah,
of
we're
it.
not gonna sell to TJ Maxx or Walmart or some of the names you see there, Susan, for sure, but there's some other names like museum gift shops, the Niagara Parks Commission. I mean, a customer like that, while dollars sold is not the same as selling to TJ Maxx, who knows? They might pick up a line of blankets and hats and mitts, because they're looking for things for their interpretive center and gift shop. So it's a real mixed bag, but I agree with you, having walked it, that half or more of the people I saw were buyers from places like TJ Maxx.
Well, no, there are a lot of buyers that are from high-end boutiques, so I think that they are there. But what I'm saying is those are the ones walking it. But then the ones that are in the show are global suppliers. And so I'm just pointing out the fact that like when you give your price lists and stuff, like it has to include, it's a wholesale price list. So it means that you have to build in a 2.2 to a 3.0 markup for them. So the price that you sell it to them for, and then it goes one level, and then it goes to what they sell it for. And then market standards are, you can't sell it on your website then for a lower price. It'd have to be a different item than what you sell to them.
That's a good point, Susan. It's really hard, given the pricing of, regional production, to sell wholesale in general. I mean, I understand where you're coming from when you're saying that. It's very difficult.
And what if I
Which is why we're not
started
there.
conversations with Field and Supply just to do some programming, which is like, even though it's kind of a wholesale market, but it's a lot of direct also, and it's local, and so it has sort of a different piece to it. I could also see Hyde Park being an interesting place. Because then you've got design, like interior designers coming straight, but then it goes back to my other point of what specific, like what's being sold. And like, that's why I think that if there is funds, I would put it into developing stock materials that are repeatable and could be aggregated. It's my 2 cents, but it would have more impact, because then like a lot of buyers don't shop the shows once they know who their suppliers are. And every season they go back to their suppliers and talk about like the assortment for the next upcoming year. So I think it just depends on the strategy. And a lot of times I think one of the things that could happen is these retailers, instead of going to a wholesaler, could do a private label project with New York, we have to figure out how it would work, with New York State. And then you've cut out the middle piece, which means that the margins could be a little bit better, even though private label traditionally is 80% margin, but I think that there could be an argument to be made to try something with a branded story that gives them a lower margin. So I guess it's just more, I mean, maybe you want to do this and test and see how it works out, because maybe I'm missing something, but from my experience, I don't see how wholesale would work super well with New York products.
It is an application process to get in, and I think she told us we would have to submit the brands that were going to sell what products and the price list, and they kind of help to determine whether or not that would be a fit for showing at New York Now.
Like my brand, they originally courted me for a while, a few years back. And then when we talked over pricing, they're like, you know what, you can do the show, but your price points are higher than what our typical buyers pick. And we decided that I wasn't a good fit for it. So, you know, and they want their buyers to be happy too. So, I mean, it could be a good exercise to see if there are people in the group or, you know, within the New York region that feel ready and want to try this, because the gifting is different. It's a different buyer potentially than some of the stuff that NYFIC is doing, but because it's not the fashion industry. It's more like home decor and gifting. And you could see, but I'm just saying the wholesale, it's a very competitive wholesale environment.
I think the way that New York companies could do okay at that is no different than how New York food companies do at the fancy food show or at the restaurant show. And speaking as a maple farmer, people who are shopping for the price of maple syrup do not stay long in the New York pavilion. They go right over to the bottlers who are importing barrels of blended syrup from Canada and putting a cute label on it, and that's the cheapest syrup. So if you just want a pillow, you're not going to shop with us, and we don't need to think that's who we're attracting. But believe it or not, we're making a pretty good living, in fact, off of selling story, quality, single source, the kinds of messaging that resonate with a certain class of buyers. And so these shows do end up being a place you can go and meet a buyer. For example, over 15 years ago, we went to a fancy food show, met a buyer that we're still shipping a pallet of bottles of syrup to every week. We don't go every year to the show because God forbid we get 3 or 4 more of those customers. But seriously, it would take for a fabric customer, let's say just one brand who wanted a couple 100 yards of fabric a year, and that'd be a success.
I think it's a pretty low bar, right?
Yeah.
To go this summer, walk the floor, get a feel with somebody who has a product in mind, with our team who, you know, our funding, Susan, is from what we do on the food side, right? We're borrowing from that, and trying to duplicate what we do at Fancy Food and NRA and things like that on the food side. And to your point, I think that we don't take folks who are selling mainstream wholesale products. It's more tailored products, and they're making a match. And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes you get hit a home run with a pallet a week person, but that's also a really good outcome. So, you know, sometimes it's something that you're cultivating over a little bit more time. So I just wanted to suggest it might be worth continuing this conversation and get on the ground. You've seen it, some others have seen it. I know our team hasn't seen it in real life, and I'd love to get them there with, you know, whomever might be right to go on. So
yeah, I think my question kind of touched on it, like what is the long-term plan? Like if New York State Markets, Taste New York, whoever's part of this commits to this, like it's usually from like a fashion, home, textile side, and my experience and probably Susan's as well, you have to build relationships and it takes seasons to get, you know, consistency. So I think it can't be a one and done specifically, like there has to be a long-term plan and also a marketing plan, which it's gonna be a different buyer, I mean, especially at our price point. So I think targeting that and figuring out that plan for the show, so it can benefit and we can get those buyers in, because what MJ is saying is very true. It's a big show and there's a lot of people that walk by. Most of the people are just curious, you know, they're wanting to do their trend market research, I think. And then, you know, there are buyers there, of course, but they're going to their specific appointments usually. And maybe they'll stop and see, but I think we're gonna like need to have an understanding and a plan, you know, to get the correct people to go through this New York pavilion, which I also kind of agree that it should be like the storytelling of New York if it goes through that, but then that also goes with the caveat of like, how are we presenting that? And I think the aesthetic is going to be incredibly important. The storytelling, there's a lot of different layers that are going to go into making that a successful, or potentially successful experiment outcome into that center.
Agree, and like, if we were going, and you know, all of this would have to be tailored to the experience and the individual businesses that are participating, the story we decide to tell. But the model that we've utilized successfully on the food side is, you know, sponsoring kind of this overall experience, supporting the individual businesses and being there, but they're repping their individual business and their individual products. We usually like to see them graduate from our support and, you know, get a couple year or two experience with us. And then if they found that to be valuable, you know, get located next to our pavilion with their own booth. So they're still in that general sphere and get that, you know, magnetic pull.
Or what MJ is saying, find clients and customers that have.
And you graduate because you have,
yeah.
Exactly. So that's kind of how our experience with vendors works. And we have been able, particularly, I mean, the National Restaurant Show in Chicago, we have an extremely large presence, fancy food. It's a different kind of model, like at the Javits. So we have a couple different models, but 100% where you are and, you know, having consistency as a location that's providing quality products is what, and interesting products is what we've been able to have success with as supporting them as a state, even if the individual businesses do change, right? Because you want to give other businesses the opportunity to have that experience as well.
But that's a good
And I would
point,
say
that-
that, sorry, go ahead.
that we need multiple years. And I know in a state budget scenario, you can't make an immediate commitment to multiple years. And if year one is really bad, no, we wouldn't go back. But part of our success in the Chicago show with our maple was we were right in the same booth where sadly some other maple farmer was last year. And buyers came and said, oh, we've heard about this New York maple. So we wrote some good orders there, just by being in the same booth each year.
And
So
I would
every
add
year. Go
on,
ahead.
I would add on to that, because I actually used to do a workshop for what used to be called Aid to Artisans and is now Handmade to Market, with 100 or so makers that would go to New York now. And when I would give the class for them, we would talk about a year out calendar, and you need to walk the show the first year or have a representative so they understand like who are the buyers, put together email campaigns and target them. And they don't usually answer. So then there's a phone component where you need to call the shop, talk to the manager, you know, and then, you know, and try and find out who the buyer is. And then there's a whole like strategy behind trying to figure out, but the, like under 5% of sales are from just flat walk-bys that see it. That's a place to you make appointments, you set up calendars, people come, you know, the buyers come, you interact with them. They usually take 2 to 3 times of seeing you before they'll place an order, because they want to know that you're that you're going to be there season after season. Like, so and this is all kind of pre-COVID. COVID has kind of switched things up a little bit because now there's a lot more competition and there's online. And to be quite honest, New York Now is not nearly as high-end or hip as Shop Object is, which is during the same time period. So like the higher end buyers usually end up there. And then so I mean, I guess there's just a strategy behind it. So if you are going to do it, I would say start prepping now.
Where's the other one? Where's Shop?
It's
Where's
in
Shop
Shop
Object?
We did reach out to them.
Oh, it's in New York City too.
You've got to have people demonstrating they have product to sell.
Yes.
So buyers don't want to say, oh, it'll take me a year to get that in your hand. So I think, unless we have real immediate product to sell, it's a little frustrating for the buyers.
And it's
That's great.
twofold. It's immediates, they call them. And so like they'll buy off of your immediates, or it is the wholesale model, which means that it's a half year out. So you have a 6-month window for delivery. And if you don't deliver, you get markdowns or penalties, or the order is canceled. So there's a whole thing in wholesale. It's its own world.
Which is coming into here why the supply chain is so important, because at the end, when you're selling product and you have to deliver it to a retailer, your investment is on the line if you can't deliver it by the date that they could essentially cancel.
Because you write the orders, and you sometimes can get a deposit, sometimes you can't, but it's a terrible model. They can cancel. If you miss your deadline, they can cancel it, and they do. So
Scaring me.
It's just important to know what you're getting into. It's a huge business, and there are shows all over the world, and New York Now and Shop Object for New York are probably the two big ones on the gifting side, which is accessories and kind of the things that this group might be able to do. And then there's the home shows. ICFF was just this weekend and I walked it. There was a pavilion or a section that was about domestic production. And that was interesting. Once again, the price points are hard from what I've seen within our structure. The time frames and the price points make it a little hard to enter that market well. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer.
Are there any sustainability types of trade shows or organic trade shows that would be more interested in natural fibers?
I think a lot of the trade shows in general, like if we were going to do textiles, most of the trade shows have a section for that. And there's Future Fabrics, which is focused on innovative and sustainable materials. That's different than the gift shows. Within the gift shows, I think there are sections, and I think many brands talk about it. So I think you're going to find it both New York Now and Shop Object that you're going to see a lot of natural fibers there.
All right, so we're going a little bit over. If folks are interested in this, if it is something, after you think about it, let me know. You can send me an email, hopefully try by June 5th, if you could express interest, so that we can start planning. If it is something you think would be a good fit, or if you know another New York business.
That's what I was gonna say, that the Hudson Valley Textile Project has over 325 members now. Not all of them are manufacturers or makers, but it's a pretty good sized network. And from that, you never can tell who we might have that would come forward. So do you have a paragraph, anything I could share with members to see what we could get?
I can send out something after the meeting to everyone.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Susan,
And
does the survey you did
I'm sorry, does the survey you did have any information about kind of the capacity of manufacturers that could like help us vet kind of a list of people who were producing at least at a higher volume?
The manufacturers that, well, first of all, the survey, there's a farmer survey that does not have that. And then for a directory list, it's in its early stages that hasn't gone out yet. And it wouldn't be for finished product per se. It would be for designers that would want to work within our supply chain. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
yes.
So yeah, I'll send out that little blurb, and then if people can get back to me by June 5th, so we can start planning if this is something we want to explore.
The only other thing I would say about that is that you might want to, so you have Taste of New York that's at a certain price point. I wonder if you want to cultivate something, it's almost like branded at like a higher level that might not just be textiles. So you maybe bring it into like the home space where you've got ceramics or you've got woodworking or something like, very like high-end elevated gift-like or home decor pieces. I think that story might resonate maybe in a stronger way, and it might be the basis for something that could be larger, because I think at the end of the day, rather than doing these trade shows, you might want to actually open up a space where the model is different, where you think about a cooperative where you're paying, like all the brands are paying a salesperson or a manager, and then the margins are a totally different thing. So I just, think that I don't think we're going to be happy in the wholesale model the way we're looking at it. I think we need to kind of reinvent something. So, but at the very least, if you are going to do it, you might want to not just make it be textiles.
Okay.
I also think like it's not all about securing the sale, although of course that's nice, but I think kind of what you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, thinking is getting the word out too is kind of like making the presence. So I think what Susan is saying is like establishing like that we're here in a way that could be beautiful and attract the right possibly partners, but then also branching off into that and possibly like further discussing opportunities with ESD and other, avenues that could have a physicality element to it that takes the burden off of, just having to make those seasonal sales.
Great, I think now's a good time to stop for maybe a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back at 2:55 and continue our discussion.
Then I may as well retire too.
There you go.
No.
Yeah.
So.
Aren't you trying?
I am. Thank you. Yeah, I'm
Right,
trying.
Jane?
Thanks, everyone. We've been a little long, but we're gonna come right back now and discuss, some education opportunities at the New York State Fair. So I think as MJ and I kind of briefly alluded to, we had a meeting last week with the new agriculture superintendent or supervisor at the New York State Fair. And she mentioned that the Department of Labor, so every year they do an agriculture career day, and it's usually, I believe, the second day of the fair. It's also Youth Day. So they, the Department of Labor typically highlights various agriculture industries, and they would like to highlight the fiber industry as one of those. So, just thinking, the Empire Sheep Producers and Local Fiber is the other organization. They have a very good plan for the Wool Center, but I think there's an opportunity for us to add to kind of what they're already doing, particularly on that day. If we had any specific ideas for demos we wanted to do, information we wanted to provide, things along those lines. So if anyone has any ideas right now, or if a few people wanted to volunteer to maybe come up with some ideas and develop some of that, interested to hear your thoughts about that opportunity.
I think it's a great opportunity to teach skirting because you have farmers there and some of them could benefit from learning more about skirting.
Okay, so you're talking about farmer education?
Yeah, and that's what it says here.
Yep. Oh, yeah, yep, you're right.
But you're talking about a career day.
Yes. So we're
in
gonna flip the
addition.
two, yes.
Yeah. But I wouldn't rule out skirting and shearing as a career day
Right.
thing as well as a farmer education thing. Since I've heard this idea, I haven't talked to anyone at Sheep Association yet. Our next meeting is in not for another week or so. But I was gonna bring it to them, and then Lily, I just heard this idea last week, so Lily, I look at her, she's the Hudson Valley Textile Project Education Training Chair. And so I haven't said anything to you yet either, just because I haven't had a minute.
Okay, that's all right.
But it is a good idea. And I agree, farmers are part of the group we're educating, as opposed to educating just youth about being farmers.
I'd like to see us enlarge that idea a little more in terms of not just skirting, but what kind of products they could be making. Because more, I think farmers are interested in that direct to consumer sort of idea and running through their own markets and I think in that sense of career day, it's important to talk to those farmers' children who aren't necessarily interested in driving a tractor, but might be interested in design or artisan making work or any of the other things that we talk about as farming adjacent, right? So I think I would love to do a demonstration on fabric made from farms as part of that career day. As something that could be, here's another way you can stay in touch with your farming background, but you don't have to be the one mucking out the barn or driving the tractor. There's a farm in Alabama called Redland Cotton. And what they have done is a long-term, multi-generational cotton farm, which is now milling and making their own fabric and selling sheets. And their daughter, who is a designer, is staying in the family business by designing shirts for this out of their own cotton. And so I think that sort of, model is something that is worth looking at, particularly here in the Hudson Valley where we have so much farm tourism.
Is there like a separate space that has workforce exhibits, or is this like events in the sheep and wool?
I think it'd be in the Wool Center.
Our part would be there, but when it's Ag Career Day at the fair.
Then they'll highlight these certain.
So the CTE group has like handouts and pins and buttons and t-shirts and scavenger hunts and all. And so, at least it's my understanding is we've done it in Maple at the fair before, that people come by to learn about something or to check off their scavenger hunt that they've asked about, what's it like to be a maple syrup farmer? And could I have my free ice cream?
What about education around regenerative farming practices for growers, for the farmers?
At the New York State Fair?
Yes.
I think the farmers, just my opinion, are focused on showing their sheep. I'm not sure how, and I think doing a skirting demonstration right by where they're showing, we can pull them away.
What about presenting, verifications like our climate beneficial verification and like discussing maybe AEM practices and equip practices for the growers? Like educating them?
I think that's really needed, Laura, but not at the state fair. I was hoping we'd have a minute here, or you and me to do follow up after all the things we talked about when we were together in Kingston recently, of what is needed to grow that movement of farmers wanting to do those practices, but not knowing how to insert themselves or what's out there or where the support is. That's sort of one of the outcomes that Susan and I are picturing from this next study, that would understand where farmers are at and what help do they need. So I'm right with you about having an event that brings them together, introduces them to climate beneficial and the kind of help they can get for implementing practices. It's just the state fair doesn't feel like the venue for the reasons Cece said. They're all there to show, and they're very focused on the showing. And there's just so much background noise, and I don't mean we can't rent a big enough PA system. I mean, it's just this crazy, it's a circus really going on around you. But I think for us here in this group to get on our docket of things we talk about, a program like Laura's beginning to outline is really a good idea.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
My only experience with the state fair was last year, so, but I do think you met like farmers at the state fair last year that really weren't aware of, their wool being, a valuable product. So I think like to what Laura and I guess MJ, you're both saying, I think why can't there be at least information and that being an avenue to continue conversations that maybe it is directed into a more like organized, meeting, but I think the information of what Laura is doing, having it available to farmers, to know that that is an avenue of exploration, that maybe, the partnership with that could be beneficial. And then also what Cece's saying, skirting, yes, absolutely important. And even like just simple understanding of what is required in the certification and how they can better their, crop and the wool and the fiber and the land, I think it could be informational. It could be a handout. It doesn't have to be, necessarily like a loudspeaker. It can be
like a table,
getting the word out there.
Yeah, like tabling, having a tabling moment, like where we were handing things out, like you suggested, Mimi. Or, I mean, also, our program right now is tied to wool quality. So it's tied to things like skirting and, improving wool. So it's like, it's part of that AMP program. So I don't think they should be thought of as separately necessarily, Yeah.
How about we get another date in mind where something big is going to happen and use that as an opportunity to hand people a postcard that says, here are some workshops coming up in your area. Here are some opportunities. Maybe it's also a mailing list builder. If nothing else, maybe they would go to a web page or scan a QR code or send somebody an email just so we found out a little more. So the Sheep Association doesn't have a direct access to all those farmers in the barn. They are there through New York State Fair. While many of them are our members, the mailing address, the email, all that, they're entering a contest to show their sheep, to see best in breed and this and that. So we don't get those names, but we could give everyone a postcard and ask them and tell them about some of the opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with just informing farmers that their wool product can have value to it. And there's different avenues and ways to go about establishing that understanding and value. But again, it's.
And how long is the fair? It's 14 days.
Yeah, that's why I think like.
But I think but I like the idea of tabling.
Yeah.
Laura, were you offering to table about regenerative agricultural practices at the fair?
Maybe, yeah, possibly. Or
I mean, it's a long time frame.
And
Yeah.
farmers come and go, is what Cece's saying, that farmer X is not there all 13 days. Farmer X leaves and farmer Y goes into farmer X's booth, and then farmer Z comes and goes into that same pen. So there's lots of different people showing lots of different things, and we could probably get the schedule. And like, you wouldn't need to table on the hair sheep days, for example.
But even inside the wool center, I mean, you have traffic, people who are not showing, but they're sheep farmers or they want to become sheep farmers, I think would be interested in getting information. I think you'd get good exposure there, especially in that
Also-
part of the state.
I think to, MJ, to what you were saying too, about being able to like collect information and collect emails and then talk about different events afterwards. I like very much the idea of maybe doing the education on how to like what makes your wool valuable. And like, and Cece, what you were saying, so like skirting, the shearing, the skirting, the best practices. I also would love to have it be a sign up for people to enter the raw materials directory. So maybe we could have that as a piece too. But I think we can also aggregate everything to be able to get sort of the emails and get that wider net cast. You know, we got 122 respondents from that first survey, but I think we can, really open it up at the state fair. So I like.
I mean, it's really having someone there the whole time, managing that venue, that space, if you want to collect all that data. It's just not going to happen with a table. Somebody needs to be there interacting with folks.
Could it be like a QR
It could be a
code or
QR
something?
code.
Like
Yeah.
you had last year, the different breeds, right?
Yeah,
that
meet the
setup,
breeds,
maybe
yeah.
it's just something additional that.
Well, one of the things I wanted
Take
to,
away.
I mean, I think partnering with 4-H or FFA was going to be a building next door to the wool center.
They say it's gonna be open.
And, maybe connecting with, young people through the FFA and getting them involved and somehow engaging with them to help make these connections.
Yeah.
Since they're right there, because we are on the outskirts of the fair, we're not in the main thoroughfare.
So
Could
any
we have-
discussion about education, I would encourage you to reach out to Jess Waltmeyer, our small ruminant specialist.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask how this might interact with and I don't have them all at the top of my brain, but the different group meetings and trainings that.
Well, they have the Sheep and Goat Symposium in October, on campus. Jess Wallmeyer puts that on, and it attracts, mainly new and beginning farmers. And people who don't actually have animals yet, who are animal, sheep and goat curious. It's a great event. I don't mean to downplay it anyway at all. But for the established farmer, like the guy we met, Cece, who's raising meat breed sheep with some of the most beautiful fine wool we've ever seen. We need another way than the sheep and goat
Well,
symposium.
but there's also the small ruminant program work team too. I
Yes.
can go back and talk to them and encourage them. And we do have livestock educators across the state, so there are opportunities for them to do things more on a local basis within a county or region to be able to address both seasoned, experienced, and beginning sheep producers.
Would that be a more reasonable avenue of approach to those farmers than trying to interact with them at the fair where there's so many distractions?
You just can't do much
You're
with
not gonna be
them.
able, it's gonna be more of an awareness thing at the
Yeah,
fair,
Right.
yeah,
which is fine.
yeah,
But if you
collecting
want them
emails.
to,
right.
you know, really, and that's what we kind of did with the, at the Central New York thing, is it'd really be good if they could actually see and do things.
Right.
At a regional meeting or at a meeting.
Mhm. So how many regional meetings are you talking about then every year happen between a small ruminant specialist and?
Well, I mean, we've got, now they're probably 6, 8, maybe more, 10 educators across the state that have livestock responsibilities. We have some livestock specialists, but then there are some educators that have livestock responsibilities, so they could do this. So it could be spread out across the state.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, so if we were to prepare a small program that would highlight regenerative practices, good shearing practices, what might be done with wool, then we would need 6 or 8 presentations a year of that sort of thing. Is that to sort of cover to hit both new farmers and
Yeah, so take
mature
the show on
mid-career
the
farmers,
road.
yeah, to take the show on the road to, instead of trying to hit everybody at the state fair, take the show on the road to the regions throughout the year.
And there are regenerative things that Carnival Extension's already doing. as
Sure,
well. So
sure.
matter of fact, there's gonna be a soil health tour. There's soil health tours coming up throughout the whole summer across the state that we're doing. That's an opportunity.
Right.
I think this is something that if there were some people here that wanted to work with the program work team, that it's possible and kind of have some synergy around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good conversation because that's what we've done around meat processing, and it's been very helpful to work through our state programming that we're doing, grant some other organizations that are working in that space, and then with the program work team that is dealing with a lot of those animals as well, some of the same folks that are
Right,
that
exactly.
you're talking about. Why don't we, as a matter of just like starting the conversation, see if the program work team, the small ruminant has, can schedule for a block for us to have this conversation and introduce the concept and say, hey, what are the places and spaces that this might work that we could have a team push in on.
And there is this group that exists and meets, and Jessica Waltmeyer has pulled that together. There's 4 or 5, like Nancy Glazer.
She's retired.
She's retired. So there's 4 or 5 people that are on this Jessica Waltmeyer team, and then 3 or 4 private sector advisors like me.
So
that
you're
are on-
already part of that meeting.
Yeah, but we only meet like once a year, but I could ask Jess as a member of this
Well,
advisory group.
it's a little bit different, or if I understand, it's a little bit different. She may have an advisory committee, which is different than a program work team. Program work teams at Cornell Cooperative Extension are primary extension educators, but they can also be industry people.
Right,
as
that's
well.
what
That
it's
is-
called, a program work team.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it may be the livestock or something else, because the small ruminant program work team meets every month.
Oh.
And
I
You're
guess
not on
it's
that
me.
mailing list.
I did not want that one. Well, anyhow, I can reach out to her.
well, why don't I talk to her?
Great, we both will.
Is there, just to bring it
The
back
day
to Youth and Ag Career Day activities at the fair, is there a role for the small ruminant team to do something that you could say, oh, we have this going on career day at the fair?
It could be also, it was Debbie Grusmeyer, and I don't know. I think it still is. There are some livestock, more on the youth livestock education point of view that could be reached out to and talked to about it? Potentially.
And Brian Ackerman.
Yeah, that's it.
He's doing, remember, he did a lot at the ribbon cutting last year
Oh,
and
yeah.
had his 4-Hers there. And there's a
That's
group
who you
like
really should.
junior dairy leaders, only they're called junior something else.
Livestock leaders, I think.
Yeah, they came to the mill. What
Yeah.
a nice group of sheep farmers, kid sheep
Yeah.
farmers. Yeah.
There's
Well,
two
let me talk to him too.
Two more thoughts for the
That's-
career day. One, Abby put together a really nice classroom activity, which I think could work well, where there's like a ball of yarn, and that would be local, obviously. And each person's given a card, and there are different, like there's a farmer, there's a shearer, there's a vet, there, like all the different types of jobs that go into making a garment. And like they basically like you take the ball and you throw it to the next person, and then they read their card, and so you make this kind of web, interconnected web. And that might be a fun, I don't know what age the kids are, but that could be an interesting activity. And then there also could be like a farm to fashion panel discussion where you've got the different people in the supply chain talking about like what they do and how they work together as a possibility.
Just not at the fair, but there is a gathering of 4-H leaders and also FFA leaders, which might have been the Brian Ackerman program that came to the mill, where a fashion panel would have been amazing. They were really top level young people, all really thinking ahead of what they're doing in careers, including this exact demographic we just talked about. A couple of sons and daughters who really didn't see themselves as sheep farmers, but who hated to not be connected to the industry.
Yeah.
So finding a way, they meet in Syracuse at the state FFA convention. We had HBTP Sheep Association did a table there last
Wear
year.
too many hats.
I know, because Heather Warren staffed that and Kate Pelkey, and Abby, but it was Sheep Association got the table.
At their convention
Yeah,
last year,
yeah,
this time.
yeah, it was about this time,
Yeah.
right? And
So the way Ag Career Day works, you can do whatever you want, right? Like if you wanted to host a table or, you know, what you're talking about, but they do have, I mean, it's very largely organized by Ag in the Classroom and kind of like the Cornell folks that run Ag Educators, FFA, Ag in the Classroom. And they usually have an event or a activity for young people who, Susan, to your question, range from like, I just got into kindergarten through high school of like a scavenger hunt to go to different places to visit them, to get a stamp, and then
Yeah,
they get
that's the
something at
thing
the
I'm
end of the
thinking
day.
of,
Yeah, and so it's a good way to drive people to you. And then, but those are general fairgoers. Those are general kids that are interested in ag. They're not a target farmer group, obviously, but to take advantage of introducing them to some messaging about natural fibers, and that I would use that day for that purpose. And the other farmer education pieces you're talking about as being more of a full fair, if that makes sense, or special days that you think there'll be, you know, more of a key group of farmers in the place. But I would think of Ag Career Day as the general consumer, young people educating maybe on exactly what, like Susan said, these are all the pieces of the spider web of careers that are involved. But also great opportunity to push the messaging just in general about natural fibers and value. But somebody has to do that, and somebody has to man it, and somebody has to kind of be an anchor for that. And I
What
don't
about-
know.
What about a
Go ahead.
citizen science? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No, go right ahead.
It's hard for me to see, like, because you're all little teeny heads in there. What about like a citizen science type of activity, you know, where you really engage youth where they do something and report back. Like, I mean, I know it takes a little bit of administrative work around that, but like, you know, thinking about having them like take natural fibers and, I mean, Fibershed did this interesting project, like, so they called, I know this is a little, they called it Soil Your Undies, but it was like they took underwear and like, and they buried it, you know, they did like a whole thing around composting it. And maybe there could be some kind of activity where kids take something and really study the biodegradability of it, the compostability of it as a natural fiber versus something that's synthetic, you know, to learn about natural fibers. I'm just
That would
thinking
be-
out loud.
I think
Yeah.
that would be interesting to display that at the fair, kind of showing, this is, you know, the shirt. And then 6 months later, this is the shirt, you know, in the
Yeah.
soil. You can see it. Because people are
Right.
walking through and you've got all kinds of ages and
Like
it'll
the
help them
picture- the
understand what
picture
what you
that's
mean by biodegradable.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pipe in over you. What Larry showed was pretty remarkable. And we've been talking, like FIT was gonna do something like this. And I love the idea of like, I don't know how this works in practice to get it done in time, but the idea of 2 large boxes and one box gets like synthetics put in the dirt, and then you plant flowers, you plant something, and then you have like natural like wool sweater or something and composting or wool, and then you see like what grows, and being able to like see the difference between the 2 boxes would be, I think, kind of interesting potentially, because it's not even just it composting, but actually the result of it, meaning like that the soil is, you know, yielding something more interesting. That was a really silent room. So
No,
maybe-
but you're making me think of like, that's almost more like a science fair. Is there an ag science gathering for FFA?
Ag is about science.
No, of course it is, but I'm just
talk
saying,
about
is there
stuff.
that sort of a, you know, I mean, what you were describing as the composting experiment, that sounds to me like a great local 4-H group's little project that they would do as part of their, you know, their, what are they, weekly meetings, bi-weekly, monthly meetings, you know?
Yeah.
But that,
Maybe-
that's something that like happens over time. It would be hard to make an impactful static demonstration
It
of
would
that in a
be,
sense.
what would happen is if you started it now and it was in the wool center and like you're selling natural things, right? So it's almost like a billboard to buy natural. Because it's like saying like what the difference is when you buy natural, instead of it going into a landfill, it's going into the earth and making the earth richer and, you know, and a carbon sink and all of that. So I guess it would be a display maybe in the wool center gift shop or something where,
No, it would need to be outside. You
okay.
could put it
So, like,
outside. There's gonna be an atrium on the outside now. I would put it outside. We don't have room in the gift shop for.
Yeah,
Is that
okay, well,
covered?
outside of there, but anyway,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
gonna
an
be all
idea of-
glass.
I mean, maybe the context isn't like, I was thinking more of a citizen science thing where the public engages, you know, and tracks what they're doing and, you know, data is reported back and maybe shared, you know, so that was my idea. But
Well,
maybe
the
the
fabric composting would be amazing as a citizen science.
And I think people
product.
would get that fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got 2 or 3 minutes that people are walking through the wool center to catch their attention and then they want to go see the sheep, you know, so there's a lot to distract them from. So I think the compost idea would fit that area and that space and the venue. But as you're talking, Laura, I'm wondering, like 4-H, you have specialties in, do we have enough information for 4-H leaders to explore regenerative agricultural topics? Is there enough information for their curriculums? Because you've got 4-H clubs and then people can pick what they're interested in, but the 4-H leaders need information to support that education. And I would wonder, and the same with FFA, I'm not as familiar with, do they have curriculum that they could, utilize to help their 4-H groups learn more about regenerative agriculture? Because every year you do a poster board at the fair, because my kid did this, and you pick topics. We did it on, how life in a pond grows. We created a pond at the house, and then they helped fill it with dirty pond water from some other pond. And then we had an actual terrarium of pond. You could see the little critters in the pond. So I think having the 4-H groups do, things like that around regenerative agriculture. But if there's not materials or information to help the 4-H project leaders convey that, like the composting thing, these activities that you're just describing would be really helpful to 4-H leaders to help them educate the kids. And I'm just wondering how to make sure that they're getting that type of information, or maybe they already have it. These are great ideas.
The climate beneficial verification is modeled after this centralizing component of it is the carbon cycle, which is like 8th grade science, I mean, so that's like most people understand that, or it's easy to diagram that and to share that kind of an idea.
Right, and I think how does that then translate into farming today? What do you mean?
I think that's the missing piece.
How does it translate
because
into?
The FFA classes have a lot of environmental focus. They have to meet New York State education standards. The kids are very much into the environmental sciences part of the ag ed experience. So I don't know specifically what each teacher in each school is including their curriculum, but I think that they would be connecting that in environmental sciences. 4-H, they have various curriculum that they can use. They just developed a new food system, one that included a lot of the sustainability waste, like the full life cycle. I'm not sure what they might have on the livestock education component curriculum, but that's something that we can definitely connect with the 4-H educators from the state level on what are the curriculums that's available, what are we using to have this conversation, what are the livestock 4-H participants, like what's available to them. We can definitely have that conversation. But I think what you guys are talking about is almost like developing a curriculum.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
So what, simply, what if we just made a composting kit and they picked it up, they've got a piece of wool, they've got a piece of synthetic, and they can take it back, and then they have a way of sending back a report what it looks like in 6 months or whatever, something like that.
That if we had a list of the topics or the resources they're already using, and then we could create little experiments that they can use to illustrate that what they're already
They
doing.
might already have that.
Yeah.
That could already exist.
Right.
On the food system curriculum that they've developed. I mean, it's a book this thick and it's experiments and it's games and it's the whole nine.
Yeah.
So let's find out what they have and bring that back. To talk about. Obviously, that's kind of like a little different than the immediate, planning for state fair piece, but I think you're talking about a wider net.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it might work better, and this is a shift you just mentioned. Instead of sort of going to the state fair and trying to talk to everybody there, or whoever happens to walk past, to go to the 4-H groups and go to future farmers and work with what they're already doing, so that when they then present their posters or do what they're actually presenting to the people at the fair.
I could ask at New York Ag in the Classroom,
Yeah.
what are some of the, like you're talking about, these curriculum
Modules that they might already
modules?
have.
Because I know that we had Abby coordinate with Ag in the Classroom on the module that the New York Fashion Innovation Center helped to support this exercise of throwing the string.
Yeah.
And she presented that at the New York Ag in the Classroom teacher training last summer. So I can check with Ag in the Classroom. I'm on their board. We're actually meeting tomorrow. The timing couldn't be better.
There we go.
So I'll see what if there's a way to see what their book for this looks like.
Yeah. And if we can hook into what they're already working on with some new language, like what Laura's talking about, climate beneficial, you know, of the various programs that are accomplishing these things.
So we're a little bit over our time here.
Shocking.
Does that always, it's always that, you pack an agenda for us and then there's, you know, when we engage with that agenda.
So I think definitely what I heard was we want to do farmer education, maybe for the state fair, focus on providing information for a separate event for the farmer education piece of it. Which, not to bring up a new topic, but just to throw it out there as a potential, there is, you know, the Wool Center's there year round. So we could potentially, you know, work with the state fair folks and use that as a venue to, you know, do another event if we think that's valuable. So that's something to keep in mind.
Catherine has to say, like, if there's ever wanting to get information out to farmers, I mean, we can't share Farm Bureau, we can't share our lists, but we can certainly
Spread it out.
put information out there on, you know, on events or educational events. So it doesn't have to, you know, be with our policy or anything. It just, you know, has to be a little bit in the realm.
Perfect. So something to think about. Did a few people perhaps want to volunteer to maybe spearhead this, or I mean, I will help.
Before the state.
Laura, I don't know if you wanted to, you know, whoever's providing the information, I don't think that single person necessarily has to be there the entire time. There will be volunteers from local fiber there as well, who, if we talk to them, I think they'd be happy, you know, we'd have to run it by them, but I think as far as providing information, they could help with that.
The same with setting up this composting clear box with the dirt and the piece of fabric. I think they would be good with that. Plus, owl exhibits are approved by the Sheep Association anyhow, so we think it's a good idea.
Were there specific things the state fair wanted from this group to provide in terms of information for them to highlight for advertising their career day? I'm just not familiar with how career day works. When you,
Ellen,
they came to you and they said, we want to highlight the fiber industry
Yeah.
for career day.
So what did that mean?
What was their ask?
Yeah.
What happens at career day? I mean, I was at the fair and I didn't really get it.
we can follow up with Ellen.
It's a scavenger hunt.
Kind of, yeah, I mean, it's a day that 4-H, FFA, those youth organizations are very present and they're talking about things, so they've got special events going on. And then I believe it's kind of like that consortium of ag education focused folks at Cornell that manage this scavenger hunt, which is kind of the center point of that day. I think each group probably does their own you know, special things. 4-H does stuff in the 4-H building and they're highlighting careers. FFA does what they do. But then across the fairgrounds, in the livestock buildings, in the Hort building, across the fair, they're highlighting careers for this scavenger hunt, right? So it's the opportunity to get to draw people to you when you participate and be able to have a moment with them. I think that's kind of how I think of it.
I did notice there were leaders that brought groups of people, either 4-H or FFA, through the building, but they had their own agenda. Yeah, so there's other things going on.
Well, we also, let's figure out, I mean, if the Wool Center would like to be a stop, let's figure out how to make that happen.
Yes.
First, so we need to figure that out and then build out what that is.
And Ellen seemed to have a role in this, right?
Yeah, she's the one who communicated with us and she oversees the.
So Ellen from the fair, the new Christina. So let's just say yes, that we're doing something at the Wool Center, but what is gonna be fleshed out?
Which day is it usually?
Second day of the fair, so it'll be Thursday the 27th, I think.
think is it during the Washington County Fair?
Yeah,
Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, that's a problem.
Problem.
That's a real problem, but I probably won't go back to Washington County till Friday. I usually go out for opening day and stay. So it'll be all right.
And there is, do you want to mention the fiber production effort that the local fiber folks are encouraging folks to do during the fair?
Fleece to shawl, only they're not calling it fleece to shawl because they don't want to limit it to just rigid heddle weavers making shawls. So they're looking for teams of 4 or 5 or more people to come in and in a day make something. They also have engaged with the Melissa Conroy at Cornell, and she's bringing in a knitting machine and a display of her sketches, and some of her students are coming to talk about the design process and what they learned in working with local wool.
Where is this gonna live?
At the Wool Center, yeah.
I mean, maybe it's as easy as knowing what is going on in the Wool Center on that day and saying, oh, we're gonna have a knitter there. So that's here's a career knitting.
Yeah, they're knitting machines. Here's
Yeah.
a career.
Demo that we, similarly kind of,
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's awesome. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'll see what, if nothing else, maybe we can beef up what's being demonstrated on that Thursday.
Right, and if there's like a specific time, then maybe you could have, meet a sheep farmer.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Oh, yeah, there's plenty of sheep farmers too.
There was also a project that Lorenza at FIT did that I thought was really nice. It was a community loom. And so she set up a standing loom, and then there was materials, and like people could just come by and add to it. It has a lot of CC's wool in it, I think.
I think.
Yeah.
We've applied to do that one day in one of those fleece to shawl things. I don't know if our application's been accepted, but the thinking was to do a community loom. Maybe even the whole last weekend, not just go in for the 5 hours and take it down, but leave it up all over Labor Day weekend.
That's what I think would be nice, just multiple days and people could just continue it. And they
And
could
when the
sign
fair's
up. They could
over,
leave their
there'd be a-
email. There could be a QR code. They leave their email so they get a photograph at the end of what it looks like. And that way you can also
Yeah.
collect names that way.
Yeah, I think that one's gonna happen, but thanks for reminding me to say as much.
Who's designing the room?
It's just a tapestry, a vertical. Yeah.
But it'd have to be a big one.
It's
Not in
huge.
that space. This one's
I mean,
not
not
gonna be
huge.
huge. This one's gonna be like the 4-foot tabletop version.
Oh, okay.
Cause that's all
We
the more
do, we do
room.
that at the Sheep and Wool Fest. Yeah, like in the Fiber Shed building at the Sheep and Wool Festival, we did that. And it was really popular. A lot of people loved it. So I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good time to close. We touched on everything as far as next steps. I'll send out that email about the New York Now opportunity. Reach out to a few folks. So our next meeting will be October 21st at 1 p.m. I'll send out an invite for that calendar. And then Kelly, did you want to give us closing remarks?
I just have a question about the report that we were asked to provide comments on the day before like Christmas Eve. And then, was that ever finalized? Is that coming out? Let me guess, post-budget, we'll probably see it.
What happened? Was there something controversial or why?
No.
No?
Just things take
Would there be then further review opportunity? Cause it was a quick turnaround and it was the week between Christmas and New Year's. But now maybe if it's not coming out anytime soon, maybe we could update a little since it's technically the report of the 25 recommendations. And now we're halfway into 26.
Let us circle back around and get back
Okay.
to you on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
And I sent over more than just notes. I kind of consolidated it into like a roadmap that I would love to just maybe have considered, just to like loop, because it's amazing things we keep talking about, but they're kind of like siloed. And I think to have momentum, we should have it be part of a strategy of how to move the needle over time.
When did you send that? Is that something Catherine has, Susan?
I have it.
Perfect.
Yeah, great.
Okay. All right. You want me to close it out? You know what I think is so cool about this group? What are we, year 2.5? Ish, 3?
Really? Oh my goodness.
It's like we've like matured as a group, I think, and it's really interesting to see how the things that we're discussing are percolating and moving through the group, right? Like everybody's in their spaces moving some of these things forward. And I mean, we are trying as a state, as FIC, as Cornell, as like these different components to do things, but it's not about like this group doing it, it's about the conversations we're having, being productive to advance ideas and then see where all the spaces work together. And it was really interesting this meeting for me to kind of see how we've moved into that really, I think, really productive space to each individually kind of advance some of these things and as a group. Those are just, that's my observation today. That's all. Sorry. Thanks, Heather. Thank you all for your time. This is moving this forward. We've talked about, you know, other things that help move it forward faster, but I think we are seeing some progress and connections and it is helpful and encouraging. So thank you all for your time and your expertise that you give to this.
And thank you.
Thanks,
for putting it
everyone.
together.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you, everybody online.